Welcome to the Being Human is Good for Business podcast. In each episode, the leadership development experts at Trilogy Effect explore how the process of self-discovery unleashes potential in us all. Now here's your host, Sherilyn Starkey.
Hello, I'm your host, Sherilyn Starkey. Welcome to our first ever episode of the Being Human is Good for Business podcast. Today we are joined by the founding partners of Trilogy Effect. Ladies, please introduce yourselves and tell us all a little bit about why you love your job.
I'm Wendy Appel, and I so appreciate and am grateful for is that the work that I do is what I feel like I was born to do, and it really combines my interests from childhood of understanding what makes people tick and going on and getting my master's in cultural anthropology, so looking not only at the individual but the collective. And I get to take that interest and use it in my work day to day to day. So it keeps me engaged, it keeps me interested, and I also feel like it's a way that I can make a difference in the world.
Excellent.
So my name's Heather Marasse, and I love so many things about my, quotes, job. First of all, it doesn't feel like a job to me. It's just my life. And I guess, like Wendy, I feel very fortunate. I feel like I kind of, through the various twists and turns of my career, what I was supposed to do found me, I would say. I started out in business because as a kid, I was always curious about business. Even though I grew up on a farm, I loved business. You know, starting with my first job was at a gas station, and I was fascinated about how that all worked, right? But I just loved working. I loved working way more than school. Although I did fine in school, I couldn't wait to be done. And I was a co-op work term student. I've always loved business. And so then what I started to realize is it's actually not business per se that I love. I am fascinated by and appreciate and admire, and I'm curious about what it takes for human beings to get stuff done and all the various ways that we get in each other's way. It's fascinating to me how we can be so ineffective and yet well-intentioned.
Well put, well put. Mary Beth?
So I'm Mary Beth Sawicki, and it's hard for me to narrow down what I love most about what I get to do. I feel very fortunate every day to have stumbled into this career. This wasn't how I'd seen my work path going. I thought I was going to be in finance, and it has not turned out that way. Thank goodness, actually, because I get to work with people all day. And that's my favorite part of what I do, is connecting with people. I've always been fascinated by people. We are fascinating.
Yeah.
And so being able to engage and explore and interact and excavate with people all day long about who they really are and what they really want is such a privilege. Yeah, I feel very fortunate that we get to work with these extraordinary people, and this is what they're up to. And, you know, really at the core, I think our work is honorable and makes a difference in people's lives. And so I am, what's that expression? If you love what you do, it's not really work.
Yes.
Something like that. I've just butchered it, but it's, you get the idea.
No, really well put. Thank you for that. And so as we get together today to record this first podcast, you know, we had a plan of what we were going to discuss, but given the current global pandemic, we've decided to kind of change course. And so we're going to devote this whole conversation of our first episode to a discussion about leading during stressful times. So, you know, work, our lives, the business environment have been transformed over the past couple of weeks. And as leaders, for a lot of this is new territory. Yeah. But before we get into the topic at hand, let's talk a little bit about the company, Trilogy Effect, and how you all work. All three of you are experts in leadership development. So can you explain to me a little bit about the tool that you use, the Enneagram, and how you use it in your practice?
So the Enneagram has been around for probably since the 70s, and then it came into more popular culture in the last several years where it's really reached a critical mass. And it really describes 9 fundamental worldviews and ways of, well, actually kind of habits of thinking, feeling, and acting. And they're all undergirded by beliefs that each one of us has about how the world is, how others are, and who we are. And then we act from that place. So learning about the Enneagram helps you see yourself more clearly and this worldview that you've been living inside of that you didn't even know. You just assumed everybody shared that. And the trick is, or the most important part is not to identify your best fit type, but what you do when you figure that out. And that's where the journey really begins. You can start actually undoing some of these habits and patterns that you've locked yourself into. We always think that a typology or a system is going to put us in a box, but we do a great job of that ourselves. We put ourselves in our own box every time we say, I'm not like this, I can't do this, I'm like that, I can do that, I'm good at this, I'm not good at that. And we're just drawing lines around what's possible for us and what's not possible for us. And so the Enneagram doesn't do that. It actually creates a lot of freedom for you to be more fully expressed as a person once you get yourself out of the box you've been in and you can see the box that you've been in.
So Heather, can you tell us a little bit about how you work with leaders and what the role of the Enneagram is in that?
Well, ultimately, the work of leadership is to create possibility, really, to create and imagine futures that haven't happened yet. And what limits us from stepping into that kind of possibility are those worldviews, those quotes, boxes that Wendy talked about. And so a key aspect of leadership development is your own self-awareness and encouraging self-awareness in your colleagues. Because the more we become aware of those self-limiting beliefs and behaviors and thoughts and feelings, the more we are able to, in a moment of choice, choose whether or not we're going to feel small and scared or trust that there's something more out there and we are bigger than the boxes that we feel constricted by. So in times of stress, that box that we tend to live inside of, that Wendy talked about, it will feel a little tighter. Mm-hmm. And we'll feel like less is possible. Even you'll feel it in your body. You'll feel like the stress and you'll feel tightness in your whole physical being. And if you catch it, you're able to stop, take a pause, take a deep breath. And like times like this, when imagine we're in a global pandemic. I mean, who could have imagined this? So
one of the most stressful times in living.
Yeah, exactly. And even as I work through this week, suddenly, we work virtually anyway, but suddenly all of our clients are working virtually too. And I catch myself feeling a little short of breath, feeling a little panicky, catch my body feeling really tight. I haven't gotten up from my desk for like 4 hours other than to refill my water glass. Those are the kinds of moments where you realize, wow, I am really kind of in my box right now. Mm. And it brings you back to the present moment. Take a deep breath. The birds are singing. There's a roof over my head. I actually have food in the cupboard. And right now, in this present moment, I have a lot of freedom and choice in how things are going to go.
And that's the kind of advice and guidance you're providing your clients this week?
Yeah, very much. And it's great because a lot of our clients are reminding us that they are finding that that is a good practice for them. It's kind of so many of our clients have a lot of people relying on them for guidance and direction in their organizations. And so a lot of the job this week from what they've told us has been to just ground people in the here and now. This is what's happening. This is what we can, the foreseeable strategy is. Mm. Here's what's being provided for all of us, and here's what you need to do to ensure you're able to work in a new kind of configuration. We will get you the support you need. Here's who to talk to. Mm-hmm. And P.S., make sure you're taking time for yourself, making sure you're, paying attention to the loved ones in your household, because many of us are dealing with kids now in our workspace. And how are we going to make this work? Maybe need to reschedule calls with bigger breaks between them, because there's family adjustments that need to be made to accommodate everybody in a new space. So it's just, in some ways, it has you come back to a very short window of, horizon to just help people get focused on what's going to work for now. And at the same time, keeping that longer term horizon. And here's what the plan is, more globally for the business. And what we have control over right now is what we can see.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Mary Beth, would you say that kind of reflects what you've been immersed in this week, working with your clients?
Absolutely. I'm reminded of this quote, both in what Heather had to say and Wendy had to say, this quote from Viktor Frankl about between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. It's very much where people seem to be finding themselves right now, taking that pause, responding versus reacting, looking at what maybe the next step or two might be versus the next year or two. Piecing things out into smaller, manageable actions to take so that we're not just in the state of total overwhelm. I know that's what I need for me anyway, is to not look at, okay, what's the 1 to 2 year horizon? Because that shuts me down. That just sends me into a little bit of overwhelm. And so taking the pause, looking at what can be done in this week or two or, month, and going from there seems to be what's working for me and working for the people that I'm connecting with.
And are you seeing that in times of stress that the people that you work with are kind of reverting to type as within the Enneagram framework? So the 8s are being more 8-ish and the 2s are being a lot more 2-ish?
So what I see that people are reverting to type, I'll speak for myself. Sure. Yeah, for sure. Reverting to type and catching myself as much as possible. Being true to type in some ways that I think are lovely. And I'm seeing this in others as well. This pandemic is bringing out some stress behaviors for sure, but it's bringing out some really beautiful things in people as well. So type 8s, I see, kind of leading the charge. They get stuff done. They, provide ground cover for the rest of us, strong, courageous, bold, heartful action. I see people giving of themselves, just being so generous. I see people making sure that we're dealing with facts, right? And, how to move forward based on that.
So that's type 5, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe type 5, it's type 6 as well. Both of those, I would say, are, let's really look at this. So yeah, I do see the stress behaviors, but I see the really healthy behaviors as well.
Ladies, like to reflect on that at all?
Well, I definitely am seeing what Mary Beth's talking about. It's funny because when I first thought about the question, I was trying to think about stress behaviors, but I think, like Mary Beth has said, I am seeing more essential qualities showing up around people, because I think this pandemic has been a bit of a global wake-up call for all of us to remind us that we're bigger than our individual identities, which is really what the Enneagram captures. And in a way, it's a system that shows how we get identified with a certain habitual pattern versus connecting to the deeper sense of who we all are. Mary Beth mentioned that what you see around the type 8. She also mentioned around the type 2, which is that giving, like pure generosity and just pure-heartedness. She mentioned about the type 5 and the 6 who are oriented towards sticking with the facts, and courage shows up a lot there, and guidance, like just wisdom, if you like. around the type 3s. It's all about we're in this together, and let's make sure we grow and learn from this, and how can we become our best selves and really perform and deliver in a way that, we hadn't anticipated and hadn't imagined. And I live with a type 9 right now because I've moved in with my daughter and her husband, and he has been just a balanced, grounded, keeping it calm, making sure we have provisions. But, it's all going to be okay kind of sense from the type 9.
Yeah. So I know that in your practice, you talk a lot about using the term staying above the line. And I wondered, Wendy, could you kind of explain that for our listeners? What does it mean to stay above the line?
Sure. A lot about what Heather and Mary Beth have described in the types. There's our more reactive tendencies of the type, where we really get very constricted, and it's the more habitual patterns of protecting and defending and blaming and judging. And the above the line is when we are less constricted, more free, and our best selves come out. And that's where our creative capacities are, our ability to be generous of heart, generous of action, bringing our wisdom forward, our inner knowing, a lot of trust, a lot of standing on solid ground. Under the line is, below the line is fear, it's worry. And what does fear do? It constricts energy. It constricts all of us. So you can see in the public sphere, it's almost like a push-pull of this really generous, kind, giving, sharing, connecting, reaching out energy, creative ideas. There was respirators being built through those 3D printers, right? Lots of creative solutions. That comes from above the line. Below the line is toilet paper. It is,
yes,
right?
That's right.
It is toilet paper. It is the grabbing of toilet paper. It is the hoarding. It is the avariceness of all that we have inside of all of us. This selfishness. Yeah. I got mine. I got to get mine. If I want to go out and do what it said, staunch individualism. If I want to go out and do what I want to do, I'm going to go do it. Despite what the science is saying, despite the warnings of, you could be landing other people in hospital. Although I will say that once I heard a reporter talk yesterday to some young people who were at the beach in Florida, because there's been a lot in the press about that. And he said to them, very kindly, not in a blaming way, are you aware that even if you have COVID-19, you could be asymptomatic and then you could go home to your grandparents? And he was actually talking with somebody who was living with their grandparents, and that you could actually pass this along to them, that they could, and he said that it really made some people think. So part of it is people aren't aware, and so they're not acting badly because, but then there are other people who go below the line, and it's really about me and getting mine and making sure I'm taken care of.
And the blame game.
And the blame game, right. And,
right. And some of the racism and just trying to find out who started this. It's kind of late for that.
It is indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's this, and we all are at, some people talk about you're either above the line or below the line, but we think you're actually often on the line. Mm-hmm. And the stimulus happens, whatever it is. And if we are aware of our predisposition, so this takes us back to the Enneagram, we're aware of our reactive tendencies, with that, we can either make a choice at that point to go above the line rather than below the line. But, most of us know that place where we know we're about to say or do something that either is going to be harmful or get us in trouble, and we just don't seem to be able to stop ourselves for whatever reason, or we're not even aware that we're on the line. So it's really the Enneagram helps us become aware of that line what our tendencies are, and what's possible for us.
That sounds like a perfect place to wrap it up.
Oh, no, I have one thing I want to add.
Oh, yeah, please do.
Because it builds on what Wendy has been saying, and it's a question that she asks, and I just love it so much. And it's, when you're at the line of choice, ask yourself, is what I'm about to say or do a reflection of who I am and who I want to be?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great winding up quote.
I'd like to add one more thing. We do need to have room for catching ourselves below the line, because one of the things that happens is we treat this as a dualistic model, and that doesn't give us enough freedom. What happens is sometimes we do go below the line because we're human beings, and that happens, and we do get scared, and life has a way of messing us up a little bit, and so every now and then we will go below the line. But I think the key is to notice that that's just all it is, and to be responsible for anything that we've caused, if there have been consequences, for hurt feelings or etc., but to have some compassion right now for our humanity, for ourselves, and for the impact we have on each other, because none of us is going to get this perfect, and that's just not how we're designed.
That's true.
So,
wouldn't it be great if we could all get it perfect every time?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really think that's an important point that you're making, Heather, because we go below the line all the time. I do daily. Mm-hmm. And it is that sort of catching yourself and recognizing where you are. So that video says location, location, location. Where am I right now? Mm-hmm. And I think we can all practice the pause and say, where am I right now? And if I'm below the line, how can I get back at least on the line or above the line? And not judging yourself, as Heather said, because that's not really going to be helpful, but it's more of a recognition, or what we call the fair witness. I'm noticing myself. I'm being fair to myself. I'm just noticing, and I'm noticing my location, and I want to make a different choice right now.
So that brings us to the end of the first ever episode of Being Human is Good for Business podcast. So please see our show notes for some links to some of the news and resources and concepts that we discussed today. And join us next time when we discuss, leadership challenges for today and tomorrow. Please subscribe to the show and tell your friends about it. And of course, we'd love you to rate us on iTunes. We're a brand new show, and we really will benefit from any ratings. In fact, you may be the first one to rate us. So race to iTunes right now and rate us there on iTunes or wherever you go to get your podcast.